Hi everyone, so now we're going to look at episode 2. Now, episode 2 is a lot of setup. Now, for most people's opinion, it's probably like episode 1 was okay. Episode 2 was okay. Episode 3 was like, wow, it was like really amazing. And the only way to get to the really amazing part is to do a lot of setup. And that's kind of the thing. Arcane, as a series, most of the episodes get better and better and just really, really interesting. But it's because of a lot of the setup at the beginning. And it's something that when you watch it the first time, you don't really notice it. It's just stuff that happens. But it's a good idea to kind of point things out, the characters that have been introduced, abilities that have been introduced, and it's kind of boring type of stuff. But anytime you're building a story, it's kind of important. So the writers basically did the best they could to make the beginning part as interesting as they can, while still trying to set a whole bunch of stuff up. And doing it in a way that there's not a whole lot of exposition. So let's look at this bit by bit. So first off is good job on starting it from here. So instead of going immediately into the aftermath of episode 1, we kind of move back to when Jace was trying to actually get into his apartment and it blowing up. So we see a series of events from his point of view. So that's kind of a nice twist instead of going completely in chronological order. And Arcane actually will do this from time to time. There will be places where things are not actually going in chronological order. There's even one really fascinating spot that I'm going to explore later on, and that has to do with Marcus. So we have that, and then we have a flashback, and the flashback, of course, has Jace when he's really young, and he's in this extremely cold area. There's a blizzard, and his mother collapses, and they may die or something, and a mage comes in and saves them. And so, due to that, basically mage saving both of their lives, that probably gives him a strong motivation to figure magic out. Now, what's kind of interesting detail is basically the scene when the mother collapses. You see a zoom in on her fingers, and two of them are frostbitten. So if you actually look right here, I mean, they're black, so they're frostbitten. And that is, of course, later on in the episode, is you will see that the mother actually has mechanical fingers. So it's kind of a nice touch there, you know. Okay, so two of the fingers were frostbitten, replace them with mechanical fingers. This is something in the world where if someone loses body parts to sickness or whatever, they have the technology to create some sort of mechanical construct that fits to the body and works. So, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. Like if you consider it with modern technology, it's like how did that work? But again, that's just kind of in story thing that things work that way. Now, another nice touch is you see that Jace actually has a wristband with the magical crystal there. So the crystal he got from the mage is something that he carries as a memento of that particular event. And they show it here in the prison scene because, again, it's going to be important later in the episode. So you get to see it, he has it, and then we move on. And we're first introduced to Heimerdinger. Now, in the scene where Jace and Grayson and Victor are there, where the explosion occurred, Victor mentions that, of course, the person who's in charge of Piltover is also the dean, and so this is Heimerdinger. Which, of course, for me gives little warning bells here because it's like, oh goodness, the person who is the head of the academy is also in charge of the city. Are we talking about someone who is, good as being the mayor or of a large city or governor of a city, or in the academic position? These are two different types of personalities. So, what type of person are we going to get? And what we got is basically a guy who is an academic who is basically in his head. I mean, he makes a very odd quote. The interesting thing about prisons is they don't imprison the mind, but they imprison the body. Like, here's the guy's like, this guy like, you know, understanding what's going on here. He seems to be so much in his head a little bit. So not making, a best showing here, and some of the things that he says either. So a lot of it has to do with an issue with the curse of knowledge, which is something you can talk about. In the case of Heimerdinger, he's like so into his head, and he mentions in a different episode that of course he's 300 years old, so it causes him all kinds of problems. You would think of someone with that experience would be able to relate to the people he's around with, but it causes all kinds of barriers and problems with his leadership. So you see that guy, he's in charge, is like, oh goodness, so what is the rest of the council going to be like? And then we run into this character, Mel. Now, Mel, of course, is shown to be the richest person in Piltover, as well as someone who's not really happy with her current station in life. So, obviously, she's going to be doing stuff. And then we find out that she's also part of the council, and she gives a present to the bearded guy, and the bearded guy doesn't seem to be like, like a smart guy there, and there's a dandy there who's even worse. So it looks like, oh, okay, so we have Mel, who's more the political operator around here, and it seems kind of obvious. The way she makes comments and the way she handles the voting when Jace is put on trial, which is, we'll go to that in a little bit. So this scene is finished, and then we move to the scene where Jace's patron, the patrician woman, is talking, and we see a shot of Caitlin with her gun. So you look at this and it's like, oh, okay. So this is set up and to show that Caitlin knows how to use a gun. Because obviously, as young as she is and she has a gun, it's like no one that young would have one unless they're really interested in shooting. So this is going to be someone who's going to be a marksman. And that's kind of just like, we're showing this just so you know people situation. Again, Chekhov's gun. And then Jace, of course, gets put on trial, and Mel kind of eggs him a little bit. He kind of reacts, and then the other council members, they kind of talk a little bit, and he gets really frustrated and just kind of, tries to make his best appeal, and that is all for naught. And he gets pretty close to being, banished from all of Piltover. But fortunately, what ends up happening is Heimerdinger decides, oh, well, we can just put you outside of the academy. And also, ends up happening here is that Jace's mom just pleads the insanity defense. Probably something that Jace did not want. But in any case, so Heimerdinger is in favor of just, putting him under house arrest, so to speak, in custody of his parents. And obviously his patron is like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So she's in favor of it. But that's 2 votes compared to 7. And then Mel is like, okay, I'm on board with that thing. Okay, so that's 3 people. And then Mel looks at the old guy, and he votes. So, well, of course, you can see what's going on right here. Mel probably has put her eye on him, thinking, okay, this guy might have something, because after all, Mel is interested in something revolutionary, something that would put Piltover on the map, and seeing the kind of passion that Jace has, maybe something is there. So you can you see, the things that are being set up here. But in the case of Jace, he's like really distraught, and the fact that basically he complains to his mom because after all, it's like magic, we saved both of us, right? It's like he's spent all his life probably pursuing this. And she's saying, but it's not going to save you now, and that's true. But he's not really happy about that. He's not going to listen to that. So from his point of view, it's like, Mom, you just pleaded the insanity defense here. It's like, why did you throw me under the bus here? And so he leaves in a huff, and then he goes to his patron, but his patron is like, go away, boy, situation. And Caitlin pretty much says that, her father said that you're a misfit, and then Jace is like, well, why are you here? Well, maybe I'm a misfit too. Now, that's an interesting comment by Caitlin. Now, that kind of comment right there seems to indicate that she's not part of the normal crowd there, which may be an indication of something that kind of shows up later in this series. But it's something that is kind of like a hint of things to come if you know what you're looking for, type of thing. So we have that going on. And then we move on to right here, where it clearly looks like Chase is going to jump off that little piece right there, that precipice, and commit suicide. Now, you can see that because he took the wristband off. So the wristband that you saw in the very beginning, when he was in jail, he'd taken it off. And of course, also the seal is off to the side there too. That kind of gives you an indication that something's going on. Now, if you hadn't paid attention to that, you might not think that that's exactly what he's going to do. But if you look closely on body movements and the stuff that's going on, it's like that is exactly what he's going to do. Now, some people may think, whoa, that was a little fast, because after all, he got basically put on house arrest. He could still do something, but probably from his point of view, all the stuff that he gathered for his research, the crystals, everything, all the notebooks, everything, they're all pretty much going to be burned and gone. His mother's not going to support him. His mother has pleaded. He said the guy's insane. That's going to hurt him. How would you like your mom to say, here's the guy has insanity defense? And remember, a whole bunch of people were watching this entire trial. So a lot of people in the know have heard this, and so he's almost person non grata anywhere in the city. But you think, okay, well, maybe he can, go back and to some of his business friends or something, or the hammer making people, that maybe he could get some support there or something. But we don't hear anything about that, so we just kind of have to assume that he went there as well and just got no support anywhere. It's like he went and tried everything that he could try, and it just didn't work out. So that's why he is here. But then Victor comes along and pretty much encourages them. Was like, look, in my case, it's like I had no name, I had no patron, but look, I became assistant dean because I believed in myself. So you should believe in yourself. And Victor hands back the wristband with the crystal, and Jace grabs it hesitantly, but does it. And of course, now they're going to go and work on the research. Good deal. Now, this is another setup. So you're going to see the opposite version of this much later in the series. This is like, oh, there's like parallels and setup. It's just lovely. I really enjoy this. So this is as far as the top side, Piltover area. So that's the through line for that. So now let's look at the Undercity. So here's another piece of setup going on again. So here is Vi practicing with the boxing machine. We'll see this boxing machine again. But what's really good here is basically we're showing that, okay, Vi has been practicing for a good while. I mean, you can look at the scores. This is probably a regular thing that she does. Maybe not every day, but probably close to it. And she's really racking up some good scores. So now we know why she's a good fighter. Now, when we saw her in episode 1, she was a halfway decent fighter that got sucker punched. And you can kind of understand the reputation that her father and other people around her pretty much thought that she would basically kick anyone's butt. And this is the reason. And this is going to be the reason why Vi is such a good fighter for the rest of the series. Because you don't typically think that, just someone could just be a great fighter just because, hey, they're wonderful and stuff. So the writers make it a point to basically set everyone up so that superpowers or at least skills don't come out of the blue, and just like they do here. So Powder, as you can see here, is good at fixing things, making things, and a really good shot. If you look at the shooting game that she does, it's like everything is pretty much perfect. So if someone who's probably been practicing that particular game for a long time, you would be a good shot. And that's probably what happened, but we don't know because there's no scoreboard attached or anything to that. But we see her as a good shot. So we'll see that pop up later on as well. Now that scene happens, and what ends up happening is the guy gets thrown through the window. So what we've seen here is basically the enforcers are going overboard in treating the people in the Undercity. So again, the tension that was building up in episode 1 is getting worse in episode 2, and Marcus was there. So I don't think that helped any. And the rough treatment by the enforcers to the people on the Undercity is going to cause all kinds of animosity, which is exactly what you see in this scene. So here, again, we get a first look at Savika. So Savika is going to pop up again. She'll pop up in the next episode, and she'll pop up through the rest of the series. But she's very much against Vander, because as far as she is concerned, Vander is weak. He's not really standing up to the kind of overbearing, the just like overboard treatment by the enforcers, which, she has a point. But this is also a very good setup here. This is a good setup for another thing that's going to happen much later in the series. This is something that you need to remember because another test is going to happen with regard to Savika. Oh, it's just like there's like setup galore in this episode. And just kind of another note, you'll see this character again in episode 4. You also saw her a little bit in episode 1, but this is kind of like, oh, remember that character in episode 1? Here she is. And in episode 4, she actually has a couple of lines. So just kind of remember, episode 5, sorry. And then the cops. So in here we have our initial meeting with Silco and Marcus. They'll have a wonderful relationship for the rest of the series. So Silco pretty much sets this up, and it's pretty obvious at this point. It's like, this is not like a meeting of equals. This is like, between Grayson and Vander, it seems they're more like on the same level. We have kind of an agreement here. I won't mess with you if you don't mess with me, and everything will be hunky-dory as much as possible. Here, it's more like Silco is intimidating and just kind of being the guy that's pulling the strings here. Like, I'll just give you a little bit of information that you want, and here you go. And you just get the vibes here that Marcus has just made a deal with the devil, and he's not really sure about, how to actually deal with the situation. Now, that's very apparent in episode 3. So, Silco has complete villain vibes here. And it gets even stronger here as, he's talking about power and how power comes to those who are willing to do anything to take it, as well as making a really interesting comment about how monsters are all within us. The whole atmosphere and the music is just shouting, this guy is a really bad guy. He is the main bad dude in this series, of course. And this is the way you think. This is pretty much cut and dry here. It's like, you got Mel, who's kind of, Machiavellian type political character in Piltover, so we got that going on. And then we got the Undercity, and we got Silco here being it's got to be the villain of the entire show. At least the show is pointing in that direction, which of course radically changes. But it's like, it makes it very easy for people who are just jumping into the series to at least you know who the good guys are and you know who the bad guys are. It's pretty obvious at this particular point. So that's all good setup. It's also good setup for how these characters change, the whole arc of everything. It's just wonderful. And then we have basically Marcus coming in because he got tipped off by Soko. And he and Vander have a little back and forth. And then we see the monkey, because the monkey will pop up again and again in various forms. So again, just introducing to the monkey, which is with kind of a nice little thing here, using the monkey as a way to alert the kids to there's an issue and that the cops are coming in. So there is that. And of course, because the cops come in and they couldn't find anything, and Powder almost got found out. Though, if you're really thinking about it, you would kind of think that if you heard someone fall down, oof, made a noise, that you'd open the door and check again. But apparently, the enforcers didn't hear that, and they left in a huff. Which, of course, the whole situation in there causes all kinds of problems. But another kind of interesting point here in this particular scene is that the gloves that Vander used are shown in the shot. So again, Chekhov's gun is just kind of like on parade in this episode. These gloves will pop up again in episode 3. They will be used. So there's that. And then you have the basic conversation between Vi and Vander. I mean, obviously Vi's upset because the cops almost found Powder out, and she just has this overprotective feeling towards Powder. I mean, she's the only sister that she's got. You see this like straight up in episode 1, where she's putting her body in front of Powder and trying to protect her in some way. And she doesn't like the fact that she feels inferior. Her place is down there, because that's what the people on the top side have just made people in the Undercity feel like crap, feel like inferior, feel like less than whatever situation. This is all reasonable. So of course Vander goes on, yeah, I understand your feelings, and of course war is not the way. All it really does is just get people killed. So he's talking about, who would you want sacrifice? Would you want Milo or Clagger or Powder? And of course, Vi listens to that, and she's like, of course, cannot argue against that. And so she kind of asks, what are you going to do? And then, of course, Vander gives a very unsatisfactory, well, I'll think of something type of like, oh, great situation. So you can kind of see exactly what's probably going on inside her head with the information that she's got, because she already knows from Echo that Vander has some sort of agreement with Grayson. So something's going to happen. It's not going to be good. And so what you get from this point in the episode is kind of not clearly telegraphed, because it needs to be. This is all reading in between the lines here about what's going to happen next. You kind of figure, oh, okay, this is what happens. So Vi talks to Powder, and basically encourages Powder that she basically, what makes you different makes you special type of thing. Powder, of course, is like, I created smoke bombs, aren't they great? I created these little bombs with nails in them. It's like, you do realize that bombs with nails, like a grenade with shrapnel going all over the place, is going to cause all kinds of pain to the enforcers. You are aware of that. I get the feeling that she doesn't. Yeah. But that's like a different thing that will show up later. So you have that, and it's kind of, this is touching scene in that you get the impression that Vi is trying to say goodbye without trying to say goodbye. It just works so well, because then you move on to this scene right here, which is just music. So the music is playing in the background, and you kind of see the scenes between the cops and Vander and Powder at the bar, and Powder is just like so distraught. So you're going like, okay, what's going on here? And as the cops are moving closer, and you see that Vander's looking at Powder and trying to cheer her up with a drink, that doesn't work. And then he's like, oh my god. So Vander, of course, probably realizes at close to the same time that the audience is like, oh, she didn't, did she? And she did. So you see that Vi has decided to give herself up for the whole event of the explosion on top. And that's like, wow, what a great sacrifice. And so then you're just kind of, okay, what's going to happen next? And they roll the credits. Good place to end it. So of course, then you're going to be like, what's next? What's next? You're really interested in that. So as like an episode in of itself, there's not like huge revelations popping up. There's just a series of events and back and forth between topside and the undercity, topside and the undercity, and that moves, forward fairly well. But there's like a whole lot of setup there that after you've seen the series and you go back, is like, oh, they did a good job of setting everything up. Yeah, as all everything that happens here is almost 100% set up, but it's a good story that really draws you in, that makes you want to see the third episode, and the third episode, wow, is is like a punch to the gut and the heart, and your heart takes your heart and just kind of twists it up and throws it away. Situation. So is the episode to see. It's like, I think out of the entire series of Arcane, it's got to be like the probably second to best episode. Period. My personal opinion. But watch the entire Arcane and make your own opinion. Just I'd love anything else you thought was very interesting about episode 2 or any other comments. Please definitely leave them below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.